Imagine stepping out of a repair shop with a quote for $4,000 in your hand. Your stomach tightens. The mechanic has just explained that carbon has filled the engine, the lifters are making noise, and the pistons are buried under thick deposits. Then your eyes land on a small blue can sitting on the passenger seat of your truck. It costs only $5. In that moment, you start asking yourself one question. Can something that cheap actually do the same job as a complete rebuild? That single moment of hesitation is where most people either rescue their engine or hand over the money. Here is the part that frustrates drivers the most. You change your oil on schedule. You spend extra on mid-grade gasoline. You treat the engine carefully like it matters more than anything else. Yet every year another issue shows up. A rough idle. Hard starts during cold mornings. Fuel economy dropping by 1 or 2 miles per gallon each season. Repair costs continue piling up, while the engine slowly loses the strength it once had. Most people never hear the real reason behind it. Drivers keep spending money on the wrong fix. They pay $300 for dealership cleaning services using almost identical chemicals found in a $5 can. They buy premium gasoline hoping detergents will clean the intake system. But on port injected and direct injected engines, that fuel barely reaches the intake valves. They replace ignition coils, spark plugs, and injectors trying to solve a misfire caused entirely by carbon buildup. Nothing improves because the actual issue remains untouched. Carbon and varnish stay baked onto valves, pistons, rings, and lifters deep inside the engine. This explanation breaks the problem into 2 separate categories because seafoam works in 2 completely different ways. Use it incorrectly and people end up damaging pistons or contaminating catalytic converters. There is also one maintenance habit that can keep an engine cleaner for the next 100,000 miles without needing a rebuild. The first issue is carbon accumulation on intake valves and inside the combustion chamber. This problem destroys more engines before reaching 200,000 miles than almost anything else. It nearly resulted in a $4,000 repair bill. When an engine starts running poorly, most drivers immediately think about the fuel system. The idle becomes rough. The engine hesitates at stoplights. So they head to an auto parts store and purchase injector cleaner. They pour it into the fuel tank, believing they solved the issue. It sounds reasonable because the bottle claims to clean the entire fuel system from one end to the other. But modern direct injection engines work differently. Fuel sprays directly into the combustion chamber and completely bypasses the backside of the intake valves. That means the cleaner inside the gas tank never touches the dirtiest section of the engine. At the same time, every combustion cycle sends tiny traces of oil vapor through the PCV system. Those vapors cook onto the intake valves at temperatures above 400 degrees. After around 60,000 miles, carbon deposits can become 1/4 inch thick, restricting airflow into the cylinders. That is why fuel economy decreases. That is why misfires begin happening. That is why the engine starts feeling weak. The truth is simple. You cannot clean the backside of an intake valve in a direct injection engine using a cleaner poured into the gas tank. Mechanically, it cannot happen. This is where seafoam becomes useful, but only when applied correctly. The easiest approach is the vacuum line induction method. It can be done in a driveway within 15 minutes. Start by locating a vacuum hose positioned after the throttle body. Remove the line while the engine is warm and idling around 1,000 revolutions per minute. Then slowly drip seafoam into the vacuum source. Do not pour it. Let roughly 1/3 of the can enter over 2 or 3 minutes. The engine may stumble or cough during the process. Thick white smoke will pour from the exhaust pipe. That smoke is not engine damage. It is carbon leaving the system. Seafoam contains pale oil, naphtha, and isopropyl alcohol. These solvents soften carbon deposits and help dissolve them. Combustion then pushes the loosened material through the exhaust. After treatment, shut the engine off and allow it to sit for 10 minutes so the chemicals can soak into the deposits around the valves. Restart the engine afterward and drive aggressively for about 20 miles to clear out the remaining residue. For engines carrying severe buildup, the next procedure is the top-end soak. The next step for engines carrying heavy carbon buildup is the top-end soak procedure. Remove the spark plugs and place around 1 ounce of seafoam directly into each cylinder. Leave it there overnight. The following day, crank the engine with the plugs still removed so the residue can blow out before reinstalling everything. This process is meant for engines suffering from stuck piston rings and severe carbon contamination. In some cases, it has restored compression on engines that were nearly headed for the scrapyard. The simplest prevention habit for this first problem is easy. Run half a can through this vacuum line every 15,000 miles before carbon buildup becomes serious enough to create problems. Experienced mechanics understood this decades ago. Small cleanings done regularly prevent massive cleanings later. Now comes the second issue, and this one operates through a completely separate mechanism. Most drivers make the exact same mistake. They extend oil changes out to 10,000 miles because the dashboard indicator says it is acceptable. They buy the cheapest conventional oil available because it happens to be discounted. They drive short distances during cold weather, never allowing the oil temperature to rise enough to remove moisture and fuel contamination. Slowly, mile after mile, the oil oxidizes. The additives break down. A sticky brown varnish starts coating internal engine surfaces. Then, one morning, a ticking sound appears during startup. The ticking noise comes from a hydraulic lifter unable to build pressure because tiny oil passages have become restricted by varnish. Ignore that sound for another 6 months, and the result can become a collapsed lifter, a damaged camshaft lobe, and a $4,000 rebuild. Sludge does not warn you loudly. It forms quietly over years, and then destroys an engine in a matter of days. Here is the process for using seafoam against sludge buildup, and the sequence matters. The first method is the crankcase treatment. It is the cheapest and easiest option. About 100 miles before the next oil change, add 1/3 of a can for every quart of oil capacity directly into the oil filler opening. On a 5-quart engine, that equals approximately 1.5 ounces per quart, which uses nearly an entire small can. Drive the vehicle normally during those 100 miles. Do not drive aggressively. Inside the engine, petroleum solvents begin dissolving varnish, coating the lifters, piston rings, and oil passages. The loosened contamination stays suspended inside the oil, so it can drain away during the oil change. Afterward, replace both the oil and the filter because all the loosened debris is now floating inside the oil pan. The second method is designed for engines already ticking during startup. Begin with the crankcase treatment. Change the oil afterward. Run the fresh oil for 1,000 miles, then repeat the process again. The second cleaning removes deposits loosened during the first treatment but not fully dissolved. The third method is the most specialized. It is intended for engines with visible sludge beneath the valve cover. Remove the valve cover completely and scrape away the heavy sludge deposits manually. Reinstall the cover afterward, then perform the crankcase treatment. No chemical product alone can dissolve 1/4 inch of hardened sludge effectively. Mechanical cleaning must happen first. Chemical cleaning comes second. There's also an important warning because many people misuse this product. Never leave seafoam inside the crankcase for a full oil change interval. It thins the oil and reduces film strength. On high mileage engines with worn bearings, that can create additional damage instead of solving the issue. Driving 5,000 miles with seafoam still mixed into the oil is a mistake. 100 miles maximum, then drain it out. During that short window, the solvent performs its job correctly. Beyond that point, the solvent itself becomes the problem. This section stays short for a reason. By now, the difference between carbon buildup and oil sludge should already be clear. The single action that helps prevent both issues from returning is simple. Bring the engine fully up to operating temperature around 190 to 210 degrees Fahrenheit at least 3 times each week, and keep it there for a minimum of 20 minutes during every drive. That alone makes a major difference. Carbon forms when combustion remains incomplete at lower temperatures. Sludge develops when moisture and unburned fuel collect inside cold oil. Heat is the cheapest cleaning system any engine already has. Combustion becomes more complete. Oil additives continue working correctly. Moisture evaporates away. The PCV system removes vapors instead of allowing them to settle and collect inside the engine. The cost of the materials is almost nothing. The real tool is your right foot and a 20-minute drive, instead of making 3 separate 5-minute trips across town. Combine that habit with 1 preventive seafoam treatment every 15,000 miles, and the savings can reach somewhere between $800 and $2,000 each year through avoided repairs, reduced fuel economy losses, and fewer early part replacements. Older mechanics understood this principle well. An engine driven hot and driven regularly almost always survives longer than one constantly babied through short, cold trips. But after cleaning away the carbon and varnish, another issue sometimes appears. Once the piston rings begin sealing correctly again and the lifters regain proper pressure, some drivers notice a change they did not expect. In certain engines, oil consumption decreases because the rings finally seal the cylinders properly. But high mileage engines can react differently. Some begin showing small oil leaks around a valve cover gasket or rear main seal because the varnish that had been masking those worn seals has now dissolved away. That is not seafoam damaging the engine. It is exposing seals that were already failing. If a few drops start appearing on the driveway or a faint burning oil smell shows up after a hot drive, the leak source usually becomes clear. It could come from the valve cover, the oil pan, the timing cover, or the rear main seal. If you cleaned your engine today but ignore those leaking seals tomorrow, oil spots may continue appearing for the next year. There are also a few important points connected to mistakes many people still make. One example happened back in 2019 involving a brother-in-law's Silverado. The truck was a 2007 model with 188,000 miles. It had ticking lifters and a C300 random misfire code that refused to disappear. A dealership in Bakersfield quoted $4,200 for a top-end refresh. Instead of approving the repair, the recommendation was simple. Put 1 can of Seafoam into the crankcase, drive it for 300 miles, then replace the oil using a fresh Wix filter, along with 5 quarts of Valvoline high mileage 5W30. The total bill, including the filter, came to $41.16. After another 350 miles, the random misfire vanished. The loud lifter ticking dropped down to a faint sewing machine type sound. That truck still runs today with 247,000 miles showing on the odometer. Skeptics will correctly point out that one truck alone proves nothing. So, there's another example. Back in 2014, mechanic Scotty Kilmer, who had been working on vehicles since 1968, performed a side-by-side comparison. 2 matching Toyota Camry 2.4-liter engines with similar mileage around 140,000 miles were tested. One engine received Seafoam treatment through the intake, crankcase, and fuel tank. The second engine received nothing. After 5,000 miles, both valve covers were removed for inspection. The treated engine showed cleaner camshaft lobes, lighter sludge buildup in the corners, and a nearly clean variable valve timing solenoid screen. The untreated engine still carried thick brown deposits packed around the timing chain tensioner. The footage was documented on camera and remains available online. The important point is simple. This product has been working for nearly 100 years, since 1942, when it was originally created for marine engines sitting for months in saltwater slips. The formula has barely changed. Pale oil, naphtha, and isopropyl alcohol remain in nearly the same balance earlier generations would recognize. That is not just marketing language. It is a formula that survived 3 generations of competitors because it consistently works against carbon, varnish, and moisture, the 3 major enemies of internal combustion engines. One final warning matters before finishing. Never pour Seafoam into a diesel crankcase without checking the owner's manual first. Modern diesel engines, especially anything equipped with a DPF or a high-pressure common rail system produced after 2007, can react badly to those solvents. Gasoline engines generally handle it safely. Diesel owners should verify compatibility with the manufacturer or use a diesel-specific cleaner, such as Hot-Shot Secret Stiction Eliminator instead. If this information helped you better understand how carbon, sludge, and varnish silently damage engines over time, keep following along for the next breakdown. More repair-saving methods, maintenance strategies, and long-term engine survival tips are coming next. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.